This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Curtis Wilkerson of HawgSports 24/7 Sports joins us. We're going to talk some basketball, touch on the Dan Enos self as well with Curtis. Curtis, it's been a minute, man. Arkansas basketball back in action inside of Bud Walton Arena tomorrow. Early game, 11 o'clock. They had some positive things they can take away from that Missouri game. What do you think's been agitating Muss the most in how they've closed out games?
Oh man, that's a good question. You know, I think probably at this point, it's just trying to figure out what the identity of this group is. You know, with the current roster, it kind of felt like there hasn't been a lot of stability there. Every time they figured some things out, you know, there's been a different injury or, you know, a guy missing time, and there's been a lot of resets and pauses with this team and figuring things out. So, you know, I think that's probably it right now. You know, early, you know, when they kind of hit this downswing, it was, you know, they just weren't hitting shots. And you know, all of a sudden they started making a few shots, and then the defense falters on them. And they picked the defense up the other night, and, you know, it was turnovers or fouls. So, you know, I think it's putting together that full 40 minutes of basketball to win games. That's what it takes in SEC play. You know, it's 40 minutes and not, you know, 35. And, you know, so for a team that's, you know, had back-to-back games here where they've led by double digits in the second half to kind of find different ways to lose those games, I'm sure has been frustrating for Muss. But you're right. I do think there's some good things to take away from what we saw at Missouri. I thought they played incredibly hard, which is a good sign after, you know, he kind of called them out for the competitiveness over at Vanderbilt. So I think they are heading in the right direction, even if the results don't necessarily show it right now.
Biggest question that fans have had in the last 24 hours or so is what's the latest on Nick Smith Jr.? Now, he posted a picture of himself, what looked to be in basketball shoes at practice. That's kind of reading the tea leaves as best we can. Is there an expectation on your front, Curtis, as someone that covers this team daily, on when he might return for his first game?
Not really. You know, I don't really get into those timelines too much because I also have a background in sports medicine. So when it comes to, you know, injuries and things like that and recovery and rehab, it really is all about, you know, how they respond to activity when they come back. So, you know, I'm sure there's probably a target timeline, and, you know, if he's back on campus and starting some workouts and things like that, I think that's a good sign that he's trending in the right direction. So really it's a question about, you know, how does he handle, you know, increasing that workload and getting back into, you know, limited practice and then full practice and live contact stuff. And, you know, when he feels 100% and everybody's comfortable with that, then, you know, I think that's when he'll be back. When that will be, I don't know. But, you know, like I said, I do think it's really encouraging. If he's back from L.A., you know, back with the team, the first thing that shows you is, you know, all indications are that he has every intention of coming back and playing, right? So that's the first step, and then you get him back out there, you know, reintegrated with the team. That's the next step, and then when he feels right, he'll be out there. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. You know, we got that timeline from Muss. It was, well, you know, probably the end of the month we'll reevaluate. Well, we're getting closer to the end of the month, so hopefully they reevaluate soon because Arkansas could definitely use him.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have him back in the fold. It'd take a few weeks, takes a few games to get back into game shape, but there's no question he is a talented player, and then it just kind of goes down the line where Anthony Black will have more freedom. Ricky Council now won't have the best guy guard him. He's got to guard Nick Smith, so I just think it would open up our offense. And I love our squad. Ricky Council's so good. Anthony Black just keeps getting better. Jordan Walsh learning how to play the game. He's fun to watch. I think the win streak starts now. I think it starts Saturday. I think we're going to get going and get on a streak. I do want to ask you, what does this Ole Miss team do that could scare us a little bit or gives them a chance to win, which I don't think they will this Saturday, but what should we be worried about with Ole Miss?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm with you. I think this is a really good opportunity for Arkansas to get some momentum back and maybe rattle off, you know, a string of wins here. Here's what bothers me about this Ole Miss game. You mentioned it earlier. It's an 11 o'clock game. Those early tips can be tricky sometimes. When you combine that, you know, with bringing in an opponent, I know Arkansas's backs are against the wall right now, but you bring in an opponent who's not very good. You know, in Ole Miss, they're 1-5 in SEC play as well. And then the style that they play, they prefer kind of a slowed down, more methodical pace of game. And then Kermit Davis is going to throw probably that 1-3-1 zone defense at Arkansas for 40 minutes. So that's the thing about this. You know, if you just look on paper and talent versus talent, you look at this one and go, man, Arkansas should roll in this game at home. But if you think about that early tip, you think about the style of play and that zone defense, which has given Arkansas so many problems, you could kind of see where, oh, man, if Arkansas doesn't eat their Wheaties in the morning and they come out a little bit flat and struggle against that zone, this is a game that can get interesting. So that's something I look at with this Ole Miss team. And then offensively, I think you really have to keep an eye on Matthew Morrell. He's their junior guard. He's the only guy on their team that's averaging double figures. He's scoring 15.6 points per game. He's very clearly the go-to guy. This is a dude who's taken 100 more shots than the next guy on the team. That's crazy. So
wow, yeah.
He's a gunner. He likes to chuck it, man, and he's a good player.
He's
so I would
chucker.
imagine that's gonna be Devo Davis's responsibility, I would have to guess, on Saturday.
Man, you talk about a guy that can play defense. I'm a Devo Davis fan, man, and it was nice to see him get it going on the offensive end. We get all our guys going, man. I do. I think this Arkansas team's ready for a run.
Yeah, I think so too. It's frustrating. Things haven't gone as expected, and some of those things, it's just out of your control at times with, who you have and what's available. And like we were talking about earlier, it's just been weird for this team in terms of stability. And I feel like everybody's kind of pushed up, maybe just one spot on the pecking order in terms of what they're supposed to be expected to do. Roles are different, and so I think you're right. If they get Nick back here, there will be an adjustment period. You're 100% right. For him, because he's been out for a month or so now, and for the team to get back into their roles. But I think the pieces just fit better with him in there, which is an obvious thing to say. He's such a talented player. But you're right. It takes a little bit of pressure off other guys. It also, it changes the dynamic of the team to where, the opponents just can't defend you the way they have been. I think that's what's given Arkansas a lot of trouble. Team's just able to really pack it in, run a lot of those zone defenses. We know that Nick Smith can really navigate that thing well, and he's a great ball handler. We've seen at times the turnovers have really been piling up in this backcourt for Arkansas recently. Well, you add that dynamic to the backcourt with Nick at some point here. That takes pressure off of these other guys, and I think it's going to cut down on the turnovers as well. So, yeah, it's only a good thing. And I do think these guys are going to be playing good ball down the stretch.
Man, that's a good point you bring up. I think with Nick Smith, it opens up the lanes for our guards to be able to penetrate, because it does, even though they can play zone, it does make them spread out and respect that three, because Nick Smith can do it all. And to your point, all these guards are willing passers. That's why I love watching this team, man. They don't care who gets the credit and who gets the points. They want the easy shot. When you're preparing for a zone team and you're a man team, how hard is it to get that intensity, that same look in practice when you kind of like to be a man team yourself?
It's really hard, especially I think with Arkansas right now. And it's another thing we were mentioning earlier, like the problems have kind of differed from game to game. So you can't really sacrifice the time on working on your own defense to work on somebody else's, and so the scout team stuff becomes really important there. The film breakdown obviously becomes really important there, so those guys can get a visual. But I think the main thing is you just got to get out there and see it, and then start executing against it. I think sometimes Arkansas, when it's just so packed in, this is a team that's drive heavy. They've got that on your mind, and you mentioned. Some of those lanes just aren't there right there for Arkansas to attack. Well, the way that you can open them up, is by continuing to move the ball. And it's not just ball movement so much as player movement off the ball. You got to get the defense looking and pointing, get that thing from side to side, and then you catch them in rotations, and that's where you can attack. So, not getting stagnant, I think, is going to be really a key for Arkansas. And the 1-3-1 defense is a little bit different. I think they can go their open offense a little bit more. You might see some more screening action and things like that against this zone. And, maybe we're seeing some of those 2-3s and the other looks that, other teams have shown.
Curtis Wilkerson, HawgSports, with us here on Halftime. Curtis, you mentioned off-ball movement, and I know that Chuck's been hammering the Audice Toney, the Trey Wades, the Justin Smith, some of the guys in the last couple of years that have really been good off the ball from us. Watching Steph Curry last night, everyone's saying, well, yeah, he's the best shooter in the NBA, and that's true. But that guy moves off the ball better than anyone in the National Basketball Association. Why hasn't this team at this point excelled at that area per se, like the other two teams have the past 2 years?
I don't know. That's a pretty good question. I don't know that I have a really good answer for that, to be honest with you. I think Anthony Black is a guy that strikes me as a really good cutter. I thought we saw that, in Europe. He had some really nice baseline cuts. We saw it early in the year, especially when Nick Smith was available and they would slide AB down on the wing more. And so I think that's taken away a little bit because he's such a primary ball handler now. You got to have the ball in his hands. You can't afford to get him off the ball to where he can cut. So I think it comes to other guys. Ricky Council is one that stands out to me because he's so athletic.
Yes, he is.
You would think, man, if AB gets in the teeth of the defense, he can really basket cut and get a ton of lobs and drop off dunks. But he's also a guy that likes to create off the bounce. And so I think, some of these guys tend to hang out in the corner, and wait to get that kick out where they can shot fake and drive it, whereas maybe, they would be more beneficial for him to cut. I think the other part of it is when you don't have as many shooting threats, guys aren't worried about, helping off of you so much. So they'll help off, and it, maybe doesn't give you as much room for the cut there. So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting situation. I know it's something they've been hammering home. I think the big guys could also help with that. You think about Mekhi Mitchell, McKell, even Kamani, guys who can kind of J-cut on those drives and find some open space for the drop-offs. But, it's definitely an area that they need to work on.
Curtis, I know the last couple of years have been really fun, not only for the team, but just getting to go to different cities, Indianapolis, Buffalo, San Francisco. I kind of expected. I penciled off March, and I was like, I can't do anything in March because it's an NCAA tournament team. Now I'm not so sure. Is this a team based on what they have in that locker room capable of doing kind of what Matt said earlier, winning 7 of 8, going on a run, winning some away games they're not expected to do? Can you see that team doing that in the final 12 conference games?
I don't know. I probably don't feel as good about it as I did the last couple of years. Now, I do think they're going to start playing a lot better basketball. I think that they're going to start winning some games here, and I do think that they're going to get into the NCAA tournament. But I look at it to your point, and I see a lot of home games there, and you feel like Arkansas, every time they play in Bud Walton Arena, they should win those games. And there are winnable games on the road. Baylor is not the national championship Baylor they were a couple of years ago. Still a very tough place to play. Kentucky ain't what they used to be. Rupp is still a very tough place to go play. You got to go at Alabama, at Tennessee. So, and then those are the quad one opportunities that are left for this Razorback team. So they have to be able to pick off a couple of these. And I think they've got the talent to do it, especially if they wind up getting Nick back here down the stretch. But, it's kind of like, we need to see him get over the hump before we can believe it situation, because they have not found a way to close out a game on the road yet. So then you look at, maybe this Baylor game next weekend, you think, well, man, is that going to be the one they get over the hump? They certainly can, but that's a tough ask for this group. And I think it just takes one for you to just figure it out, get that taste of victory on the road, and it's like, okay, we know how to do this. We know how to finish a game away from our own building, and then maybe you can rattle a few off. But I think they got to get that first one before we can start expecting them to go rattle
starts
off
with
a
one.
bunch of them on the road.
Starts
with one.
That's right. I do wonder if this Texas A&M team's for real, but I want to switch over and ask you about the new OC, or I guess he's the new OC because he's already been here once before. And I'm a Dan Enos fan. I think he's kind of like a football nerd, and I think it's going to be great for KJ in the film room, in the quarterback meeting room. I just want to get your thoughts on Dan Enos and this hire as he comes back to Arkansas as the OC.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a good hire for Arkansas. I think the familiarity, with him and the campus is important. With him and Sam Pittman is important, especially just given the timing here. You're into January, guys are moving back in, and you got to replace your OC. So, getting a guy in here that kind of understands, how to work with Sam Pittman. He understands the recruiting landscape. I think that's all going to be a really good benefit to the Razorbacks. And then you mentioned it, he's got just a nice track record with developing quarterbacks and the things, he does with guys at that position. For a guy like KJ Jefferson, who's going to be a third-year, returning starter, you're going to have kind of a different system. It's going to be his first time since being the starter with a new offensive coordinator, to get a guy who has experience and kind of a proven track record of doing a nice job with quarterbacks. I think that's a key as well. It sounds like alumni are excited about it, and so far it sounds like the players are pretty excited about the move as well. So I do think that this was a good hire for Arkansas, and I'm really happy to see that they did it quick. They got it done in a hurry.
Curtis, we'll leave it there. Curtis Wilkerson, Hog Sports, 24/7 Sports. Always great stuff that he can only talk basketball. He can talk other things. Man, appreciate the time.
Yes, sir.
BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from the NFL and bowl season to esports. You'll find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. We're the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. Bet Online, where the game starts.